Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to give you a demonstration of using the crop tool in GIMP, and I have an image open here that we're going to do some cropping on just for examples. And what we're going to do is we're going to create multiple images based on this image, and you'll get the idea as we go through it by using this crop tool. But before we get into that, just a little bit of an overview of why you need to use the crop tool and need to know how. Well, you might be wanting to isolate a portion of the image. You may want to remove part of the background so that you can emphasize a certain part of the image. We have a large image here, and we could make multiple images out of this one large image, and that's what we're going to do in this demonstration. And we're going to crop this image and export the images that we derive from this image into a directory, and then in the process you're going to see how we can work with the crop tool to do cropping. So let's get into the demonstration. Basically, you want to use this tool right here. It's the crop tool, and as you'll see there, you can either click this button, or if you point to it, you see it has a shortcut key of Shift and C. So you can hit Shift C. So if I go back to the Move tool, I can just hold down Shift and hit the C key, and it switches me to the crop tool. Now, when I switch to the crop tool, look at my tool options. I've got the Move tool right now, but if I hold down Shift and hit C, it switches and I get the tool options for the crop tool. Now there's one other way that you can get to the crop tool, and that is up here in the Tools menu. If you click Tools and you come down to Transform Tools, crop is one of the transform tools. So, and you'll see there's the shortcut key for it. So you can do it any of those three ways. You can click this tool, you can go to the Tools menu, and I forgot, you can actually get to it by right-clicking on the window, on the image window, and going to Tools, and then going down to Transform Tools, and there it is there. So you've got four ways that you can get to the crop tool depending on where you're at and how you want to do it. At any rate, once you get the tool loaded, or once you pick up the tool, so to speak, you can begin cropping. And the way you crop, let's just say we wanted to get a little bit of this. We wanted to make a smaller image out of this region right here. We want to get the sun and its reflection, and then we want to get some of these palm trees and just a couple of these birds. Well, what you could do is, with your crop tool, you just drag out a rectangle around the area that you want to keep. So you just click down and drag and let off, and then you will have highlighted an area of the image that you want to keep. Now, after you get done dragging this rectangle out, you're still not done. You haven't made the selection yet. You can fine-tune it. For example, let's say I wanted a little bit more of this bird. Maybe I wanted a little bit more gap between the bird and the top. I could move up here towards this edge, and when you see that yellow rectangle and your cursor changes, see my cursor here is crosshairs, and it has the knife and then a little version of the Move tool icon. It changes when I get close to the edge, and what that tells you is you're free to click that edge and drag it up. So if I click it and just drag it up a little bit, just up to about there, because I don't want any of this bird in there, I could just drag it up to there, and then that edge is set. Let's say I want to move this edge out a little bit, maybe a little bit more that way to get some of this mountain, right? And then I want to fine-tune this edge because I've got half a building in there, but maybe I want some more. Maybe I want that. Maybe I like the idea of having all of these trees in the image. And you can do the same thing with the bottom. You can do it with every edge. You can fine tune where you're going to crop the image after you drag out your rough selection. Once you get it exactly like you want it, you can either click inside of it, do a quick click, just hit the mouse button and click it and it will crop it, or you can hit the enter key. Either one. If you hit the enter key on your keyboard, it's going to perform the crop, or if you click on it like that, it performs the crop. They both do the same thing. So you can see here we have an image that we've cropped out. We've cropped out a group of pixels from the original image. Now I want to show you something that is important to understand. If I zoom out by holding down Control and using the mouse wheel, you'll see that I still have the entire pixel map around the part that I can see. And that means that that whole image is still there. In fact, if I switch to the Move tool, I can drag it around. Watch what happens when I drag these pixels around. I can just change. Basically all we've done is created a viewport and told GIMP, hey, only pay attention to this part of the image. And I'm dragging the pixel map around behind that view, and I can set it anywhere I want. Now I liked the original one, so I'm going to hit Control Z and it's going to move us back. But I want you to see, I wanted you to note that we didn't really lose any data yet. So what we've done is we have cropped out part. Well, we haven't cropped out, we've just defined the area that we want to keep. Now watch what happens, but because we don't have any, the layer is limited to this little area. So if we do a export, if we do File, Export As, right, and we're in the working directory here, let me get rid of that. That's one we're going to do later. That's one we're going to do later. We're going to call this one, actually we might not do that one later. We might when we get to the aspect ratio part of it. But let's call this one sun. I don't know if that's a sunrise or a sunset, but I'm going to call it sunset. And I'm going to put an extension on the end. Let's make it a JPEG, and we'll hit enter, and then we'll get our dialog box. And I want to take the quality up to 95 is the default, I believe. That's set at, that was set at 10 from the previous video that I did talking about compression. We can leave this on, and I'm going to hit export. And then what that does is, let me go find my, so here's the working directory. What we've done is we just exported, we've exported that section of the image that we cropped it, but we didn't actually get rid of all of the pixels that aren't visible. We just selected an area of it and said, hey, export this to its own image. And that's really the idea behind what I'm showing you here. You don't have to completely cut up an image to get a bunch of other images out of it. So now we've exported that image out, so we could just hit Control Z and back up, and that removes the area that we cropped. However, I'm going to go back forward, and I want to show you, if you do want to get rid of all the pixels and just keep this, all you have to do is right click on this layer and then flatten the image. So if I click flatten here, it's going to merge all of the layers into one, and it's going to remove, it says remove transparency, but this particular image doesn't have any transparency. It just has it has pixels that we're ignoring. But watch what happens to that yellow box, that yellow border, when I flatten this image. See how it went down to encompass only the part that is highlighted or visible? So now we've gotten rid of all of that other pixel data. So that's how you would, if you did want to crop an image and get rid of everything, that's one way that you can do it. I'm going to hit Control Z to get the originals back, and I'm going to hit Control Z again so that we can crop another part of this image out. And so the way we just cropped, we used the crop tool. I'm going to click it again, and what we did was we just defined an area, but there's a part of this tool, its options, that I use all the time and you may find very handy when you're working with it. Let's say that I wanted to, let's say I'm working on an image that I'm working on using this image for like a profile icon for social media or something, and it says that your image has to be 512 pixels by 512 pixels. So your image has to be exactly the same height as it is wide. So there's a couple of different ways you could do that. You could, and let's say I wanted to make this center part of the image my profile icon. So I could drag out an area that I want to keep, like let's say this right here. Say I wanted to use that for my profile icon, and then I could do what we did before and just adjust this, squeeze this down and get it close to square, and then move this around to set it where I want it. I don't know if I explained that before, but before you commit to the crop, you can actually move it around to set it exactly where you want it. But let's say I want it right there. That's what I want for my, actually I want the sun a little closer to the middle. So that's what I wanted. Now, the thing about this is while you are adjusting your square, which may not even be square, that's the whole idea of why I'm demonstrating this. This may or may not be a perfect square. You would have to export it and then see, what the measurements are. Or what you could do is you could come up here, and I'm going to hit escape to, let's say I want to back up and I don't want to continue. You can escape out of it by hitting your escape key, and then that just ignores what you just did. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put in here 512, and then I'm going to put a colon between the two. The colon is the one that is just above and to the left of your question mark on your keyboard. Move that up and then type in 512 again. So now what I've told GIMP is, hey, I want to use an aspect ratio of 512 by 512. That's the dimensions that my profile picture has to be if I'm going to use an image. That's the size they recommend, so that's what I put in here. You just separate the two dimensions by a colon. The first one is the width and the second one is the height. Now you separate that by a colon, and then you just set this drop down box to fixed aspect ratio, and then you check this. And what that does is that locks in this aspect ratio. Now if I click on this, you'll see that nothing really happens, right? But if I drag, watch what happens if I start dragging out a rectangle. See how it's always a square? Now you'll see over here on this side that my sizing is 283 by 283. So it's exactly square. It's not 512 by 512, but it's using the same aspect ratio that this is. And so I don't have to do any math. I can drag this thing out as big as I want it. Let's say I wanted to do something like that. instead. Now it's 1024 by 1024, but it's still a 1-to-1 aspect ratio. And if I wanted to zoom in on just the sun like I talked about earlier, I could just start moving in the corners till I get it where I want it. And now we're at 516 by 516, and I could click that and keep that crop. So I'll hit enter, and then I will export that by hitting Control-Shift-E. That's the shortcut key for doing the edit or the file export as. Shift-Control-E. You click that. I'm going to just call this profile, and then hit enter, and it export. I get the export dialog. Let's say I want to keep all the settings the way they are, and I hit export. And now you'll see that I have two images. I've got two images now in my folder, and one of them is a perfect square, and the other one kind of resembles a, like a background of a social media. It's not really the right size, but you get the idea. We cropped it to be the size that it needs to be. And let me just go back and show you if you did want to do it the other way. Like, I'll back up here. Let's say you did want to crop out the square and you didn't want to use this method. You still have your measurements here. I forgot to tell you that before, but if you wanted to drag out a square, you could do it like this and then just keep an eye over here and get it exactly right. Drag this out. But you can see how tedious this gets. It's not anywhere near, and this looks square, but it's not. It's 20 pixels off. So you can see how, that's exactly right. But let's say I wanted to go to 600. You can actually just hit these, the plus and minus keys here, and you can take each one of these measurements up to, say, 600, and this changes as you change these. You can also position it with these, right? So if I take this down, it moves it to the left. Start at 615, and then if I want to move it up and down, I could do that with this one. See, the bird's head is in here. Say I didn't want that, I would just take this down and that moves it up. So you can either move it with these buttons over here, you can drag out the edges, or you can just move it around once you get it the right size. A lot of flexibility in GIMP. I have a tendency just to drag them out, and if I want a perfect square, or I'm going to escape out of this. Let's say that I'm creating a banner for a social media channel, and it says, now this is just an arbitrary number that I'm making up just for the demonstration. Let's say that it says you need to make your banner needs to be 1200 by 620. Well, all I have to do, instead of doing all the math to figure out where to crop this and all that stuff, all I have to do is, what I say, 1200 by 620. All I have to do is type in 1200 colon 620, and then make sure this is checked and that fixed aspect ratio is set. And then all I have to do is just drag out a rectangle where I want to keep it. I can either do the whole thing and it'll crop off just the top because it's too tall for that aspect ratio, or I could make it smaller and just keep the parts that I want for my, let's say I want that sun right in the middle. See, when I'm dragging this around, you get the little plus that tells you the center of the crop area, and you can just put that right on the center of what you want to keep and let off. And then you can see here that the size of my crop is not 1200 by 620. It's 1478 by 764. But if I go ahead and crop this, okay, and then I export it by coming up here to File, Export As, and then I call this banner right? And I save it. I get the dialog box, and then I'm just going to hit export, keep the defaults. Now we have a banner in here that is not, see the size here is not 1200 by 620, but let me show you something. I'm going to come over here and close down this instance of GIMP. I'm going to discard all of our changes, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to open this banner up. I'm going to right click it and open it with GIMP, and GIMP's going to open it, and I want to show you the benefit of cropping the way we just did. This image is not the right size. Now keep in mind, we haven't destroyed the original image. We just cut out a part of it and made a new image off of it. But watch what happens if I come up here to image and I come down to scale. If I change either one of these and I have the aspect ratio locked, let's say I want the first side was supposed to be 1200, so let's change it to 1200. As soon as I tab out of there, watch this 764. See, the reason why that works is because we fixed the aspect ratio to be the same ratio as whatever 1200 by 620 is. So it doesn't matter what size your image ends up being, it's the right aspect ratio. So when you go to upload it, it's going to fit. Or you could adjust, you could resize it like I was going to here and just set this to 1200 and 620 and then scale it, and then now it is the right size because we just scaled it down to what it needs to be. And then you could export that and then overwrite the original banner, which is 1478 by 764. If we overwrite that, that's the one we just opened with GIMP, you can export over the top of it, click export, and it overwrites the other one. And now you'll see, you'll see here, if we click that, look at the size now. It's 1200 by 620. Now, when you go to close, when you're overwriting an image, because what we did was we opened this image in GIMP, so that's what this pixel map is showing us. We exported it at a new size. So when we overwrote the original, we replaced what was there, and now we're just looking at a copy of what used to be there. So I can close this and I don't have to save it again because it's already overwritten. So I can just discard these changes and it doesn't change the original because we already overwrote it, if that makes sense. Usually when you're working with programs, if you open a file and then you save it and then you close it and it asks you if you want to save changes, it can get confusing. So with GIMP, just know that after you do the export, you don't need to save the changes again. So there we have taken, and let me get the original image back here. I want to just show you that we haven't lost the original image. If I can open it up again in GIMP. This is the original that we started with, and we created these 3 images all for social media. For example, let's say this one's for our banner, this one's for our profile pic, and this one's for a post, or maybe to go in a post. However you want to look at it. We got 3 distinct images, and we made all 3 of those from this one image, and we did it all with the crop tool. Now there's some other settings in here that you could use on the crop tool. You could crop by a specific size. If you check that and then you go 512 by 512 like we did earlier, right now when you click on this, you're going to get a square that you can't change the size of, because we've said we want it to be 512 by 512, and we've fixed the size. You can't crop, you can't move any of this, you can't make any of these adjustments. It's exactly 512 by 512. So if you know the dimensions and that's what you want, and you don't want a certain part of the image, then this might be the way to go. However, you can't get the parts of the image that you want using this method. That's why I never use it. It's less flexible. But that might be the way you want to use it. So if you want to do a fixed size like this, you can, but you just need to know ahead of time, if you want your image to be 512 by 512 and you want it to have all of this in it, you can't do it like this. It does turn out to be similar to how we did the other one in this case, because if you look, I'll just show you it's very similar to how we did this, because we cropped this one at exactly 512 by 512. So you get the same results if you do want to use that size. But the advantage to using a aspect ratio is that, let's say I need to change this to 512 by 512. So now my aspect ratio is locked. So now I can do, it's the same aspect ratio, but look, I can make it have more in it, is the point. Or if I wanted to go smaller, let's say I just wanted the sun and the bird like that, I can do that, because 438 by 438 is the same aspect ratio as 512 by 512. I would just have to scale this up, which would degrade the image, so I don't recommend you do that. I recommend you always go with something bigger. Like 614 by 614 gives me this bird included in the image, where this one does not have this bird. And I can even move this around to have all these birds in it. But you get the idea. You can either crop by size or you can crop by aspect ratio. But if you do it by aspect ratio, it gives you more freedom. It doesn't have to be exactly 512 by 512. You can make it bigger, and then, like we did earlier, open it back up and then scale it down to 512 if that's what you want to do. So that's how you use the crop tool. That, by all means, I didn't cover every one of these options. Look, there's all kinds of things you can do, and maybe I'll do a video on that later on. But these are the basics. This will get you through most of what you're going to do using the crop tool in GIMP. And one thing I didn't show you is that when you're doing this, you can change how much the opacity of the part you want to ignore is. It's set to 50 by default, and that's what I always leave mine at. But you can turn that off where you don't even highlight the area that you're cropping. But I think it works pretty well at 50 for me. That way I can kind of see the context, but it's not really the focus, and I can clearly see what I'm cutting out. So that's just another setting that you could do, that you could use if you wanted to. So I'm going to escape out of that. I'm going to close this down. That's going to bring us to the conclusion of this demonstration. Just a reminder, I'm not sponsored by anyone. I don't have a Patreon, and I don't charge a membership to see the content. The main way I support my channel is through my designs that I sell on marketplaces, and the links to the marketplaces are in the description. If you found this information helpful, you might consider taking a look at my designs. If you're not really up for that cost, if you like something in the video, subscribe, like, give a comment, or just let somebody else know about the channel. All of those are free ways that you can support me in my effort to share information with people about GIMP, Inkscape, and other open source software. So I hope that helps, and thanks for watching.